There's a lot of different opinions on protein. Some people think that you can never eat too much protein. Some people think that if you eat a little bit too much, then it's going to be terrible for you and you can potentially increase your risk of getting cancer. There's also different thoughts on where you should get your protein. Should you get it from animals or should you get it from plants or both? Well, there was a new study published in the American Journal of Public Nutrition, and hopefully it can help answer a lot of these questions. It was looking at how much protein people are eating and where they're getting their protein sources and its effect on healthy aging. Now, healthy aging in this study was defined as free of the major chronic diseases and having no impairment in your mental or physical function. And the list of the 11 specific chronic diseases that the study was talking about were cancer, except for non-melanoma skin cancer, type 2 diabetes, myocardial infarction, coronary artery bypass graft surgery or percutaneous transluminal coronary angioplasty, congestive heart failure, stroke, kidney failure, COPD, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and ALS. And the reason that they picked these are because these are the primary causes of death in the United States or of impaired lifestyles. So basically, this study was looking at your overall health span, not just how long you will live, but also how healthy you will be for that period of time that you're alive. Because whenever you look at someone living longer, you also want to see how healthy they're living. Because when you get older, I'm sure you're going to want to be able to do a lot of the things that bring you joy, like whether it's hiking or going for walks, etc. Now, this is why protein is thought to be so important, because as you get older, your muscles will start to atrophy and then you won't be able to move as well. So if you have enough protein, it can help build enough muscle to mitigate this loss. So this was a cohort study and it had about 50,000 people between about 30 and 55, and it followed them for about 30 years. And they were tracking their diet, including how much protein and where they're getting their protein. They were also tracking their physical and mental health status by looking at their health records and also a series of questionnaires. So the study had 5 different quintiles of protein intake, ranging from the lowest to the highest. So the lowest protein intake was an average of 57.7 grams of protein and 14.2% of total calories, and it ranged all the way up to 90 grams of protein and 22.5% of their total calories. So it wasn't a huge difference in the protein from the highest to the lowest group. And the lower end of that protein consumption is actually what's considered the recommended daily amount of protein. The recommended amount of protein per body weight right now is 0.8 grams per kilogram. So that lowest group is right in that range. Now, the first thing to note is across the board, no matter what type of protein you got, the higher amount of protein that people were eating, the healthier aging that they had. And that again is based on that healthy aging criteria that we talked about before. Now, I do want to note a couple things that might also be skewing the results that are not just from the protein. So the people that had more protein also tended to eat less calories overall. The low protein group had an energy intake of about 1,900 calories, and the high protein intake group had an energy intake of under 1,600 calories. So that's over a 300 calorie difference. Now that alone could also explain the healthy aging, because we know that people who eat less tend to live longer and healthier. But this still could be an indirect benefit of the protein, because eating protein also has a satiety aspect to it, meaning the more protein you eat, the more full that you will feel. And this could explain why people would eat less calories in general when they up their protein intake. You could also make the argument that people who eat more protein in general tend to have healthier tendencies overall. For example, people who eat more protein tend to be the people that like to work out, because people who work out usually track their protein intake. And if you look more at the data, you'll see that the higher protein group also had more multivitamin use. Also, their alcohol use was lower than the lower protein group. And the same thing was true with the current smoker percentage. The people that ate more protein actively smoked less than the people that ate less protein. In studies like this, it's pretty much impossible to take out all of the variables. Now, that's not just with this case, but it's pretty much with every single nutrition study out there. There's not really many randomized controlled trials that especially go over 30 years like this study. But I will say that this study did do a good job at taking out a lot of different variables. Now, which type of protein was the best? So they looked at total protein intake, they looked at dairy protein, animal protein, and plant protein. And they also did an analysis where they substituted certain macronutrients for that specific type of protein to see if it was an overall net benefit or net loss in your overall health span. So you can see in the graph here that there's total protein, animal protein, dairy protein, and plant protein. And they were substituting for things like total carbs, refined carbs, carbs from whole grains, total fat, saturated fat, polyunsaturated fat, and monounsaturated fat. Now, just glancing at the table, you can see that it pretty much favors substituting any of these nutrients for protein in every single group. The only thing where a different macronutrient actually benefited more than protein was polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now that's except for the plant protein group. And the same also holds true for whole grains in the animal protein group, but the difference here is basically the same. I don't want to say that one really benefits over the other. But you'll probably notice that pretty significantly, plant protein blew every other macronutrient out of the water compared to other protein groups. That means that no matter what, whatever macronutrient you're substituting for plant protein, that you're getting a net positive effect on your healthy aging. Now, that doesn't mean that these other nutrients aren't healthy. You still need to get these other nutrients. But what it's showing is when you substitute these nutrients for specific sources of protein, then you tend to get a net positive benefit, especially for plant protein. So the way I look at this is if you substitute one of these nutrients for a dairy or an animal protein, then you're going to get either a neutral or a positive benefit. But if you substitute it for plant protein, no matter what, you're going to get a positive benefit. They also did another analysis. So this table was looking at increasing specific protein intake by 3%. So they were increasing animal protein, dairy protein, plant protein, and total protein in regards to healthy aging. And they also had an analysis on how this affected memory impairment and physical function. The main thing to note here is increasing your protein consumption by 3% of your total energy intake had a net beneficial effect for all of these groups. But again, plant protein was by far way more effective than any of the other groups. So does that mean that you should only be eating plant protein like soy protein or pea protein from now on and avoid any of the other protein sources out there? No, I don't think so. Again, if you look at the study as a whole, you'll see that any amount of protein consumption that you increase, whether it's plant protein or animal protein, had a net positive effect on healthy aging. And in general, people who ate more protein, no matter the source, tended to have better healthy aging than those who ate less protein. But when you look at the specific data, eating more plant protein literally had only positive benefits, and you can't say the same about other sources of protein. But what I don't want you to take away from the study is that you should be scared of eating certain sources of protein. Because again, many people seem to think that eating more protein is bad for you and it can cause cancer or other problems. But that's not what we're seeing in the study. We're seeing the exact opposite. When people increase their protein consumption as a percentage of their total calories, then they actually age healthier. And part of the reason why I think plant protein had such a benefit compared to the other ones is, one, the fiber content of plants that you don't get from other sources of protein, and also the other phytonutrients that you get in plant protein and other plants that you don't get from other sources of protein. And it's really no surprise. I mean, this is why people tell you to eat your vegetables. But when it comes to other sources of protein like animal protein, I think as long as you're eating clean, lean sources of animal protein, you would still be fine and still get a positive benefit. Part of the reason why I think protein is so important is, again, when you get older, your muscles will start to decline and you won't be able to do a lot of the things that you used to be able to do when you were younger. This is where more protein is so crucial, because we have studies when people actually start increasing their protein consumption more than the recommended daily amount, that they actually start to benefit from it. And this is especially true in elderly people. When elderly people start eating more protein, whether it's from a protein shake or just eating more in general, especially when they combine this with working out, then they're able to function a lot better and maintain a lot of their lean mass. So in a nutshell, what should you take away from the study? One, make sure you eat your vegetables, but also make sure you're eating enough protein. And most likely it's gonna be more than the recommended daily amount of protein. You know that feeling when you're going for a run and you're just gasping for air, almost wishing you had like an inhaler or something? A lot of times this will happen in the first 5 to 10 minutes of your workout. Now this could be more than you just being out of shape. Usually what happens is when you start taking those big gulps of air, it's never really fixing the problem and you're still feeling out of breath.